All right. Welcome back to round three, the final round. We've got our bug player Kyle Del Paggio facing our very own Eric Dupuis.
Yeah, this was an interesting matchup. I look forward to commenting on it. Looking back and seeing my lines of play is going to be really fun.
So Eric's running a Grixis control deck, which does run Time Vault Key. It has the Tinker for Blight Steel combo, so lots of explosiveness going on. One thing I do like about your list, one of the smaller things about it, is you have Sensei's Top and Voltaic Key going on. So there's lots of ways to generate card advantage.
Yeah, in between the Sensei's Top Voltaic Key, Dark Confidant, Jace, there's lots of recurring card advantage. And of course, Snapcaster for any card drawing that might end up in the graveyard. It's a lot of fun. I tried to not get pushed too far in that direction. A lot of people see that synergy and start running multiple Voltaic Keys. They end up running things like Mox Opal because they have so many artifacts, and it takes the deck in a completely different direction. I tried to
Right.
keep it simple and have as much game as possible versus workshops and dredge, and it worked out. The last two tournaments I've played in, I was really looking forward to this matchup as well. The only match that I lost at the Pandemonium event in the top 8 was against a very similar list to Kyle, so always fun to try and get revenge against an archetype that knocks you out of the top 8 and see what you learned.
Right. It seems like Abrupt Decay would be pretty relevant versus in this matchup. The uncounterability, it can deal with your Time Vault. It could also deal with any threat you put on the table. Um,
It can answer a lot. It can be played around very easily, though.
right.
There are times where it's backbreaking, like when you're all in on a Dark Confidant hand.
Hmm.
So let's see
You
here.
could always Hercule's Recall in response.
I feel like this is very favored for my Grixis list. Kyle's deck very much feels like a legacy deck in that it's not hugely explosive.
Hmm.
So I have two Lightning Bolts main deck and another two in the sideboard. I can really keep his creatures under control. That with the three Snapcasters, and I also have the Mental Missteps to keep the Deathrite Shamans off. I mean, it can be a route when my deck is clicking on all cylinders, but
Yeah,
we will see how this goes.
there's a lot going on. And Eric, your sideboard seems very diverse, which I like. You have a Yixla Jailer, a Tormod's Crypt, a Surgical Extraction, Nile Spellbomb, Grafdigger's Cage. Those are five very strong cards versus Dredge, and they're also very different. Um, they can't just get totally hated out.
Yeah, it's not a single card like Leyline of the Void, which can be easily answered.
Hmm.
And Cabal Therapy is a real card in that deck, and if you have, say, two Nile spell bombs and they happen to see based off of a Cabal Therapy, you could be in bad shape.
Right.
I also like the synergy against shops. Ingot Chewer, sometimes I bring it in so I can get rid of their bridges, depending on how much I'm boarding out. And Lightning Bolt is an interesting card against them because it can allow me to kill my own creatures to get rid of the bridges. That's mostly a game one consideration, but it
Yeah.
is an option. You want as many chances to win versus Dredge game one, because a lot of decks just auto lose versus that Bazaar Baghdad.
Right. And Dredge is one of those decks that will just mulligan to Bazaar Baghdad. I've seen people mulligan down to one. Um, you don't always get there when you mulligan down to one, but Bazaar really is the linchpin of the deck.
Yeah, so it's too bad we didn't get to see Dredge this matchup. That was probably the major deck that we were missing in the coverage.
Yeah.
But this is a pretty classic matchup of two different type of control decks. One a little bit greedier than the other. I'm trying to do more explosive things. Kyle's trying to play a little bit more of a fair game. So a mull down to 5 is very good news for me here. And
Eric
I
made
open
another
up
play.
with a fetch land, keeping library in my hand.
Yeah, library is not going to do anything for you right now as you're on the play on 6. You're going to want to generate some card advantage before you run that out there.
And I go with a merchant scroll. Usual target here is
Ancestral
Ancestral.
Recall. Yeah, that'll get your library online next turn.
Now the basic island there is to try and play around Wasteland.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Kyle does play 3 wastelands and a strip mine. Strip mine would deal with the oh, and you used your floating colorless to cast a soul ring. So you've got some pretty strong mana development on turn 1. Versus Kyle's land go.
Mana Crypt bumps
Looks like
me
you're
down.
taking 3 life off Mana Crypt. Ancestral meets a force. So that's still pretty good for you. You use 1 card to get rid of his 2 cards. Still looking very strong. So what does Kyle have? Land plus 3 cards in hand, and you have much more mana, and you also have 3 cards in hand?
So
2 cards.
we've got a Dark Confidant on his side of
So
the
you need to
board.
answer that pretty soon in order for him not to run away with this game. Either answer it or just win.
And a Thirst for Knowledge.
Thirst for Knowledge seems good here.
I'll see if playing that Soul Ring ends up biting me here. And it
Discarding
does.
2 forces.
2 forces. So
Yeah.
it looks like playing that Soul Ring was probably the wrong play for multiple reasons. Farther away from library activation.
You did not need that extra 2 mana, and you could have gotten more card advantage off of... Oh, your Bob for his Bob, so that breaks the parity right there.
The extra card in my hand would have been much more relevant with this library as well.
Yeah. Wastelanding. He's not wastelanding the library because he knows how far away from it you are. And he already got 1 card off of his Bob, so he offers the trade. You don't take it, obviously. Wow, and he has another Bob.
Yogwill.
Yogwill's
No
pretty
black.
strong here. Oh, yeah, no black.
Yeah, that basic island is not looking fantastic right now. If that had been
Nope.
an underground sea, I'd be in much better shape.
So he's got 2 Bob triggers. And you have the Mana Crypt and the Dark Confidant going on right now, so you could actually just lose to your own deck at this point. Deathrite Shaman.
So I'll need to get...
I'm surprised he doesn't send in with the double... Oh, he wants you, or he doesn't want you to block with Bob. Oh, we forgot to roll. Looks like you don't take life. Alright, so right now we could see something pretty strong happen. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to Ancestral Recall. There's no Black Lotus. You made your land drop. You could Thirst for Knowledge. You could Merchant Scroll for a Time Walk. Or...
Not Merchant Scroll for it. That's only going to get me instants.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Though that play does happen a lot. People do try it. So the Yogwill's in there. And this is the reason why I like to play the type of deck that I'm playing, is I've got the ability to just be explosive and potentially come back out of a really bad spot.
Right.
That Yogwill was exactly in time, seeing as how Deathrite Shaman would have been able to remove that Ancestral and make it pretty uneventful.
Mm-hmm.
But this is looking pretty bad now.
So now Kyle just lost 5 life. May or may not end up being relevant. He's going to need to start to put the game away. He can somewhat rely on your Bob and your Mana Crypt. Okay, so he's willing to make the trade.
Yeah, he really needs to do that.
It makes sense because you're down to 4. He can Deathrite Shaman you on your turn and then untap and Deathrite again.
And Mana Crypt may kill me.
And Mana Crypt might end up just killing you.
Yeah, he knows the longer the game goes, the less it is in his favor when I have cards in hand.
Right, because you can play things like Time Vault with Voltaic Key. You can Tinker for Blightsteel and perhaps Time Walk. There's a lot of strong lines of play in your list. So He's got to just put it away as quick as possible. He's loaming for his wasteland this turn.
And strip mine.
Strip mine, yeah.
Yeah. Pretty irrelevant, really, because the game's going to be over in 2 turns.
Right.
But being down the mana is definitely helpful.
You don't die this turn. Can you dig your way out?
Yeah, that strip mine's not going to get activated. It's now or never.
Yep. And he chooses to Deathrite you. Oh, did you pass? Yeah, you passed the turn.
Yep, looks like I passed, and then that's game over. So some misplays there. Not
right. You should have fetched the Underground Sea. It turns out, but hindsight's 20/20. And you should not have played the Sol Ring.
Yes, and those are the type of errors that may seem small to people, but I mean that's can be the determining factor. Having those 2 Force of Wills in hand could have potentially led to a line where I was able to activate Library and see more cards.
Mm-hmm.
Could have stopped the Dark Confidant or the Deathrite. Lots of different things can happen there.
And one interesting thing I'd like to note is that on your last turn, you chose not to play out anything because you recognized you didn't have any outs, so there's no reason to give your opponent unnecessary amounts of information.
Yes. There's the only reason I would do that in terms of playing things out is to try and gain more information about their deck, under the assumption that I'm going to do better with information about their deck than they're going to do with information about my deck.
So your sideboard game looks like you maybe want to bring in a Nile Spellbomb, perhaps a Surgical, Pithing Needle on Wasteland, perhaps, and Lightning Bolts.
Those are all valid options. Lightning Bolt's definitely coming in. That's the most important card. It depends on how highly I value the Wasteland Disruption.
Right.
It certainly was a factor that game. I actually don't remember what I did. I don't know if you caught it there in the footage. Pithing Needle against his deck is not as good as it is versus a lot of decks because he has the Abrupt Decays,
right.
So he can get rid of it very easily. And he doesn't have a ton of Planeswalkers. It comes in versus decks that are running like Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, and Jace the Mind Sculptor because it has a lot of really juicy targets. He also doesn't have Time Bolt. So a lot of the time that Pithing Needle is going to be a completely dead card.
Okay.
So it could go either way. It really depends on how you feel you're most likely to lose the game. If it's going to be through a war of attrition or if it's going to be randomly getting screwed by a wasteland.
Yep.
And Strip Mine can do the job just as well. He has Life from the Loam to recur it. So then
it's actually worse for you.
Absolutely.
And do you think Kyle brings in his Nature's Claims? He did not see your win condition, so he doesn't necessarily know that you're on Vault Key unless he has prior information.
Well, Kyle and I actually have played quite a bit, so he would know my list. I had actually top 8'd with this list not long before, so it's out there. Anybody who's looking to find the information would know pretty much my exact list. I am notorious for keeping the same list for months at a time, mostly due to just not having the time to change them. Usually when I'm involved in Magic, I'm trading, I'm getting people cards that they need, not so much tinkering around the edges on my decks. So it's no mystery what I'm playing most of the time.
Right. So I could see him bringing in some amount of Nature's Claims or Pithing Needle, perhaps, because you do play you play more than one Jace. Pithing Needle could also name your Time Vaults.
Usually when I'm looking at the sideboard question, I start with what cards are absolutely terrible in the matchup.
True.
Figure out how many cards I want to take out, and then figure out what the best package is to bring in, because cards do have synergy. Certainly, 3 of a certain card at times is, completely different than just a single copy. Like the Gush Engine in Vintage. It didn't see any play as a singleton, but you have 4 of them, it really changes that.
Right.
And sideboarding is a little example of that.
Okay.
And in Kyle's list, there's really not a lot that looks weak against me. I mean,
No.
it's all kind of middle of the road.
Yeah.
So here I'm playing around Wasteland, grabbing a basic island. Nothing too fancy, unglued. Into
Unglued is still
Ancestral.
pretty nice. Ancestral.
And that's where you want to be on turn one.
Oh yeah, turn one Ancestral, uncontested.
In my list, I really like to find Ancestral early, even if I can't defend it, because I have the 3 Snapcasters. And I feel like
Right.
that's a huge asset to be able to... Oh, how am
You
I?
were on the
Lightning
play.
Bolt, yes. Fetch Lightning Bolts.
One thing you've told me many times, which I think really rings true, is a Snapcaster that sits in your hand is not a good Snapcaster. If it's not on the table, it's not doing its job. So setting yourself up for future turns where you get to just run it out for value seems like the way to go.
And here, that's what we have. We have an Ancestral and a Lightning Bolt in the graveyard. Any Snapcasters drawn from here on out are going to have some utility.
So he has his Ancestral Recall. Is that gonna? Yep, that resolves.
So some serious shots fired early.
Kyle actually has to go to discard.
Another basic island. Very sturdy mana base here. This,
If you have a Snapcaster, you probably just pass the turn and Ancestral on his end step, so you don't have to discard, right?
yeah, you definitely don't want to be discarding. This could force some action.
Yep. Yep. Looks like Snapcaster's gonna happen. Yeah. He did draw a mental misstep, so that is the difference. That's the maybe the reason to do it on your turn, but
If you're discarding the cards anyways, it's not really worthwhile.
true. You had 7 in hand. Playing Snap would have brought you down to 6, and then Ancestral brings you up to 9, so you're still discarding 2 cards.
So that's really not where you want to be.
Yep.
Getting the misstep out of his hand is not ideal there. You'd much rather have Ancestral Resolve, but this is a good
Yeah.
board state. This is very much just playing a game of Magic, making land drops, casting spells. This is pretty comfortable.
Yep. You basically, with his mental misstep, you temporarily rancored your Snapcaster Mage.
Silver lining.
Silver lining, yeah.
Now, I didn't bring in the basic mountain. For the most part, it's a colorless land. It really would just be for the lightning bolts, and pretty much any other land would be better, except for the fact that Wasteland is going to destroy the other lands.
Right.
The basic mountain is really more for the workshop matchup.
They rely more heavily on the land destruction because they play the full 4 Wasteland in addition to the Strip Mine. Kyle's only on 3 Wastelands. It seems like he has one in the grip. Yeah, he does, so he's just sitting on it for now, which could hinder your board development. But you do get to untap and get to 4 right now if you make your land drop, so it might not matter. Yeah, I feel like a Jace right here would be pretty strong. He's got 2 mana open, so he could potentially mana drain it. But I believe you have Force in your grip.
I think here we're going to see another Snapcaster.
Oh, Snap Lightning Bolt. Yeah, that's another really strong play. Before he gets to have an active Deathrite Shaman.
Oh,
Or Thirst for Knowledge, yeah. We were right in the fact that we thought it would be a value play.
Yeah, just looking to continually get ahead.
Yep. Oh, that was end step. Nice.
Yeah, just sitting on those forces. Nothing Kyle's done is important enough for me to force a will it.
Mm-hmm. Passing the turn. So you have instants in hand. He wants to take away your black mana. So, brainstorm with your basic blue. What could your response be? You definitely have a response in mind if you're not using that Underground Sea to float the blue. maybe Brainstorm, Snapcaster Brainstorm.
It's more than likely Vampiric Tutor. It would need to be a black instant in order to have that
Oh
play
yeah,
make sense.
Vamp Tutor would be a real nice play here because that also gives you a shuffle effect to get rid of two redundant or unnecessary cards from your hand. Yeah, that would be a really strong play.
Yeah, that's one of the only reasons I can think of. So we've got a fetch from Kyle.
Now, when exactly is he fetching? Because I don't believe he actually had priority at that moment, but
Well, I resolved the Brainstorm, so it would go back to the Wasteland activation on the stack. So now
oh, right, right.
he's
And he's the
casting
active
V-Click
player, right?
in response.
Yep. So okay, so he's casting Vanillion Click in response to his Wasteland, and you have the opportunity to respond. Mana drain the V-Click. That's going to be nice for next turn. And then a Vamp Tutor.
Probably find a good use for the mana drain mana
Yeah.
coming my way.
Grab a Jace, grab if you have if you have a Voltaic or a Time Vault, grab the other piece.
It looks like good timing for that because Kyle's hand looked to be Trigon Predator and Abrupt Decay, which is part of the problem of trying to run answers, is you can get bottlenecked like this and then just lose. Usually a resolved Vamp Tutor is going to be game over.
Right.
That's why it's worth the card and the life. Going down the card because it doesn't put it in your hand, and then 2 life on resolution, usually worth it when it gets a Yawgmoth Will or a card that just wins right there.
Yeah, and with 3 colorless mana on your next main phase, that's going to allow you to do some big things. Maybe even, no, you're not going to go Yawgmoth's Will unless you have a black source in hand. And you got rid of your Ancestral already, so Yawgmoth wouldn't be the play. Looks like you grabbed a, who's that?
Alpha Lotus.
Alpha Lotus, nice.
4 Mike is that Lotus. I've had that for a little bit. Looking for a Magic player named Mike, looking for an Alpha Lotus.
Is that signed by Richard Garfield?
It
right?
is. It's that one. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really nice.
I've looked at it many times. Wanted to buy it and just not had the money to do it.
Yeah, we could probably change it to Matt. That probably wouldn't take too much.
It's a slight alteration. So you grabbed the Lotus, and where did it go? Back to your hand?
Voltaic Key.
Oh no, it's in play.
Time Vault.
Yeah.
3 mana floating still. Apparently didn't think about the mana floating. Oh, and Demonic Tutor.
Demonic Tutor.
All the
for
wins.
Time Walk. No.
Yawgwill probably.
For Yawgwill, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's the reason I'm playing this list, is it can just
win out of nowhere. It's like, oh, you overcommitted to a turn, and in response I win.
Yeah, so that was a very comfortable game of Magic. Just playing lands, playing better spells than my opponent.
Right.
That's really where I want to be most of the time.
That does seem pretty strong. Yeah, so game 3, you're going to be on the draw. So his opener, if he opens with the turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, again, that would be strong if you don't just untap and win. But your deck does have that explosive element where he could really get punished by a turn 1 Deathrite.
Absolutely. Turn 1 Deathrite doesn't really hold up very well versus turn 1 Tinker.
No.
And it's debatable whether or not you walk away from a Flusterstorm to play your turn 1 Deathrite. It is tough. I mean, if you're shuffling up a card like Deathrite, you pretty well need to jam it on turn 1. Otherwise, it's not really worth playing that deck. But sometimes you do have to make that concession.
Yeah. I mean, if you're choosing not to play your turn 1 Deathrite more often than not, then it seems like you probably shouldn't play Deathrite. I always think it's interesting how different people use different amounts of piles when they pile shuffle. Some people are on 7. 2 people were on 6 earlier. You're on 10.
I'm always on 10 because I can do the same for limited or constructed. It ends up being 6 piles of 6 or piles of 4. So I'm always in the same space mentally. And when I go to check, it's just very easy if I'm ever off a card.
Right. It's a nice way to make sure you haven't over or under sideboarded.
Yeah, I try and keep it so I'm not thinking about it. I want as little decision making going on with routine stuff like pile shuffling. Try and keep my focus on the important tactics of the game.
Right.
Now would be a good time to thank Scholars and Dave for hosting the event.
Oh, definitely.
He actually came up with the idea. We were trying to think of ways to kind of rejuvenate the vintage community, and he said, "How about Sanctioned?" And it turned out to be a real success. This was our second time doing it, and we're getting people coming in from Boston, and we're really looking forward to the growth. We also did a prize for the best unpowered deck, meaning no Power 9, Mishra's Workshop, Bazaar, and I don't remember if we excluded Time Vault. I'll have to check the announcement. That one, maybe it'll come off the list if it was on there, because it would be interesting to see if people could do anything with that and Ral Zarek in an unpowered deck.
Oh, yeah.
That might be fair enough. But the spirit of that is to try and get people who really like Legacy and Vintage to be able to take a Legacy deck and kind of port it over and still have a extremely good expected value. If they win the best unpowered prize, they're already doing well, and they still are in the running for the fantastic prizes from 1st to 4th.
Right. Do you remember what list ended up winning the unpowered?
Yeah, it's the person I had beat to get to the finals, Jan Smith. He was running a Goblin list, and it was very, very difficult. Went to 3 games, and I was able to explosively get to Vault Key in 2 of the 3 games.
Okay. All right, so he led off with a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman and was not punished for that, deciding to get in the beats, which means he does not have a 3-drop that he would possibly want to respond to anything with. That being probably Click in his list. Or he could have, I don't know, it seems a little greedy because he could have wanted to double Mental Misstep. Misstep, Snapcaster, Misstep.
There we go.
Something
I've got
along those lines.
double Underground Sea into Dark Confidant on my side of the board. Not playing around Wasteland at all so far.
Mm-hmm. See, I like Dark Confidant early on way more than Deathrite, because the earlier you play the Dark Confidant, the more he's got the Abrupt Decay to answer it. But the earlier you get to play Confidant, the more advantage you get out of it. And
We got a Wasteland setting me back.
so he's definitely ahead on board position. How many cards are in his hand? I want to say about 5.
Oh, and passing the turn.
Oh, you missed your land drop. Yeah,
this is not good.
That's brutal. It's a bad hit right there.
What a world of difference in between having a Confidant on board with 2 lands and being stuck on 1.
Yep. So he's able to further develop his board, make land drop. Oh, another
second
waste.
Wasteland.
Yeah.
This is turning bad.
Yep. He's gaining life off your. Oh no, he's just generating mana to cast his own Bob.
And I need to throw a force
have
at that
to.
at this point.
Yeah. Otherwise, he's all right. So you got your land.
Now I see
He's
a
only got
force
3
in my
cards in hand, so you can still end up sort of shifting the balance back.
Yeah, I've got the force in hand. He has 3 cards. This is a fairly comfortable spot. It's debatable whether or not the Lightning Bolt on the Deathrite Shaman is the right play there. A Dark Confidant could certainly blow the game wide open. I do have 3 more bolts in the deck and Snapcasters.
The Deathrite allows him to potentially make his 3rd land drop and just drop Jace, which would be really bad also. It would be about as bad or worse than a Deathrite Shaman.
Oh yeah, an active Jace here would be
Dark
devastating.
Confidant.
So this looks fine. 2 lands, going back and forth.
You still have more cards in hand, I believe.
Oh, and a strip mine.
Yeah, that's.
And here's the Trigon.
Trigon.
I recall this line here. This is very relevant. I have a force. I could force him, and I don't. Now, he tapped the strip mine, and I felt like this was a considerable error.
Yeah, I mean, you don't run Wasteland to fully punish him, but you could string together maybe like a Tolarian with a few artifacts and generate some serious mana advantage.
So here's the line that's going on. I grab a second Volcanic. I've got a Snapcaster in hand.
Oh, okay.
And a Brainstorm. So the play I'm going to take here is I'm going to try and Brainstorm into my second land.
Okay.
I don't recall why I fetched first.
Time
I'm
Walk.
going to Time Walk and then try and hit my second land. Maybe I don't have a Brainstorm there.
Mental misstep.
Missteps.
And you're actually thinking about whether or not to force that
Yeah.
misstep because him misstepping that Brainstorm pretty much. Okay, so you Flusterstorm it. Yep. You don't want to get the card disadvantage from force. Do you get your land?
Yeah. So this looks like a blunder. In watching the footage here, I can't see a good reason why I didn't save the fetch land to get rid of the cards from Brainstorm. The line I was hoping to achieve was hit my land, Snapcaster, Lightning Bolt the Trigon.
Yep.
But now I'm pinned on one land and I Fate Sealed myself with the Brainstorm, so this is very bad. Force of Wills in hand that aren't particularly useful facing down a Trigon. Also, usually not very good versus me, but it's going to stop me from developing with artifacts, so I can't build my mana base back up with a couple of Moxes.
And he's just a 10-turn clock. He forces you to try to maybe take lines of play that are not necessarily like winning lines of play. They're just lines that keep you alive.
Absolutely. Well, Time Walk here shortens the clock. So 7 hits. And we take the adjustment for force, going down to 11.
Another Underground Sea. Is he going to play Dark Confident? No, Snapcaster.
Snapcaster Time
Walk
would be...
Yeah, you got a force there.
Yeah, and there's the Snapcaster that was
you're pretty far away from 3 mana.
Was really hoping to be able to bolt there.
Yeah. Alright. So, forcing the second Snapcaster Mage, pitching your own Snapcaster Mage. Yeah, that first force shortened your clock by 1 turn. Snapcaster Time Walk swing, that's at 5, and then hit you for 4. Yeah. You need to draw... Oh, and yeah, so you can't. So, Black Lotus, Time Ball Key. 1 time.
I think this mystical here is just to see if there's any possibilities.
Yep.
Blightsteel
No
in
outs.
hand, that's not where you want to be.
Yep. But, it was a good match. Kyle showed us that a Legacy bug deck with a few adjustments can definitely hold its own in a Vintage tournament. He had game versus Shops. His sideboard is indicative that he has game versus Dredge. And
he beat one of his worst matchups in Oath.
Yep.
And another control deck that was objectively more powerful. So, yeah, it was a good performance.
So, I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. We'd also like to thank Wormwood Gaming. They provided a beautiful deck box prize for this tournament. Um, and I mean, I'd like to thank everybody at TheEndStep for um, taking the time to do this vintage coverage. You're not going to find vintage coverage pretty much anywhere else like this. Maybe some written tournament reports, but uh, you don't see a lot of video coverage of vintage events. And yeah, we'd like to thank Scholars Bookstore in Bridgewater and Dave Tassinari for hosting the event. Uh, Maybe we could do more coverage for this in the future. Um,
Yeah, he was very open to that. He really was pleased to have you guys. Everything was handled really professionally, and the level of quality here, I think he's going to be really happy with. It's a great way of promoting the format, and hopefully the store gets promoted. And I really want Scholars to be synonymous with vintage in New England, and same with TheEndStep.
Definitely. And I'd just like to remind everybody to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, use our website, and thanks for watching. And I'd like to also thank Eric Dupuis for doing coverage with me. I've known him for a very long time. Uh, he's pretty much my go-to guy for vintage insight and just a general magic maven.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.